September 1944. The fields of Belgium lay scarred by war. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams stares through his binoculars at the German positions ahead. His 37th Tank Battalion has just liberated the town of Jamel, but the celebration is short-lived. Intelligence reports indicate a massive German counterattack is forming. Panzer divisions are regrouping in the Ardennes forest, and Abrams knows his exhausted men are about to face something terrible. The statistics paint a grim picture. American tank crews in the European theater are suffering catastrophic losses. The M4 Sherman, America's workhorse medium tank, is being torn apart by German 88mm guns and the feared Panther and Tiger tanks. For every German tank destroyed, the Americans are losing 5 Shermans. Tank crews have begun calling their vehicles Ronsons after the cigarette lighter, because they light up the first time, every time. But the losses extend beyond machinery. By late 1944, tank crew casualties have reached staggering proportions. Some armored divisions report 50% crew losses in just weeks of combat. Replacements arrive barely trained. Morale is plummeting. Abrams commands roughly 750 men and 54 Sherman tanks. The German force reportedly massing against him numbers in the thousands, with dozens of superior panzers. The math is simple and brutal. His battalion faces annihilation. What Creighton Abrams does not know on this September morning is that within weeks, he will stumble upon one of the most unconventional tactical innovations of the entire war. A trick so absurdly simple, so laughably low-tech, that when he first proposes it, his own staff will think he has lost his mind. It involves no new weapons, no secret technology, no additional men or tanks. It involves flags, small, colored flags. And yet this stupid trick will cause an entire German defensive line to collapse. It will convince hardened Wehrmacht commanders that they face an armored force 10 times its actual size. It will save hundreds of American lives and accelerate the Allied advance by weeks. The innovation will spread through the American armored forces like wildfire. It will be studied at military academies for decades, and it will cement Creighton Abrams's reputation as one of the most creative tactical minds of World War II. But first, he has to survive what is coming. To understand why Abrams's solution was revolutionary, you must first understand the nightmare facing American armor commanders in 1944. The problem begins with the Sherman tank itself. Designed for mass production rather than combat superiority, the M4 Sherman weighs roughly 33 tons and mounts a 75mm gun. Its armor thickness averages 50mm on the front hull. These specifications made it adequate against early German tanks. But by 1944, the Americans are facing a transformed enemy. The German Panther tank weighs 45 tons and carries 80mm of sloped frontal armor. Its 75mm high-velocity gun can penetrate a Sherman from over 1,000 meters. The Tiger I is even more terrifying. 56 tons, 100mm frontal armor, and an 88mm gun that can destroy a Sherman from nearly 2 kilometers away. The kill ratios tell the story. In Normandy, American armored units require an average of 5 Shermans to destroy a single Panther. Against Tigers, the ratio climbs even higher. Tank crews begin writing letters home before every engagement, certain they will not survive. Military planners have tried everything. They have upgunned some Shermans with the more powerful 76mm gun, but the improvement is marginal. They have added extra armor plates, but this slows the tanks and strains their engines. They have developed new ammunition types, but these remain in short supply. The doctrine of the time offers no solutions. American tank doctrine emphasizes combined arms warfare, infantry, artillery, and armor working together. But in the chaos of the European advance, units often fight alone. Tank destroyers are supposed to handle enemy armor, but they cannot be everywhere at once. General George Patton, commanding the Third Army, grows increasingly frustrated. His armored spearheads are bleeding tanks and crews at unsustainable rates. Intelligence reports indicate the Germans are rushing their remaining panzer reserves westward. A major confrontation is inevitable. The experts agree on one thing: there is no tactical solution. American armor simply cannot match German armor quality. The only answer is overwhelming quantity: more tanks, more men, more artillery. But Creighton Abrams is running out of all three. His 37th Tank Battalion has been in continuous combat since the Normandy breakout. Replacements are slow to arrive. Spare parts are scarce. His men are exhausted, his tanks battered, his ammunition supplies inconsistent. And now intelligence is warning him that a German armored Kampfgruppe is forming in the forests ahead. If those panzers catch his weakened battalion in the open, the result will be a massacre. The stakes could not be higher. The Third Army's advance depends on maintaining momentum. If Abrams's battalion is destroyed, a critical gap will open in the American lines. The Germans could pour through, threatening the entire Allied position in Belgium. Abrams needs an answer that does not exist. He needs to make his small force appear large. He needs to terrify an enemy that has every reason to be confident, and he needs to do it with whatever scraps he has on hand. Creighton Williams Abrams Jr. was never supposed to become a military legend. Born on September 15, 1914, in Springfield, Massachusetts, young Creighton showed no particular aptitude for warfare. His father was a railroad repairman. The family had no military tradition, no West Point connections, no path to command. Abrams entered the United States Military Academy in 1932 not through family privilege, but through the nomination of his local congressman. At West Point, he was an unremarkable student, ranking 185th out of 276 graduates in the class of 1936. He played football, earning more recognition on the field than in the classroom. His early Army career seemed destined for obscurity. He served in the 1st Cavalry Division, still mounted on horses when he joined. The interwar Army was tiny, promotion glacially slow, innovation actively discouraged. Young Lieutenant Abrams appeared headed for a quiet career in some forgotten garrison. But then came the war, and with it, Abrams discovered his gift. He possessed an almost supernatural ability to read terrain, to anticipate enemy movements, to position his forces for maximum effect. He led from the front, his command tank always among the first into combat. His men worshipped him. His superiors marked him for rapid advancement. By September 1944, Abrams commands the 37th Tank Battalion of the 4th Armored Division. He has fought across France, leading the armored spearhead that helped close the Falaise Pocket and trap an entire German army. General Patton personally knows his name. Yet for all his tactical brilliance, Abrams remains unconventional. He distrusts doctrine. He questions orders he considers foolish. He improvises constantly, adapting standard procedures to fit circumstances. The idea comes to him in the quiet hours before dawn. Abrams is reviewing intelligence reports, studying the German positions ahead. He knows the enemy has observation posts throughout the region. German scouts are watching every American movement, counting tanks, estimating strength. And that is when it strikes him. The Germans are watching. They are counting. They are estimating. What if they could be made to count wrong? Abrams begins sketching on a piece of paper. He draws tank formations, standard American practice calls for tanks to advance in column, one behind another, to minimize their silhouette and reduce vulnerability to air attack. Each tank company carries distinctive marker flags for identification. But what if the flags told a different story? What if a single tank carried the flags of an entire platoon? What if 3 tanks carried the markings of 30? What if careful spacing and dust clouds and aggressive radio chatter convinced German observers that they faced an overwhelming force? It is, Abrams realizes, completely ridiculous, and it might just work. The 37th Tank Battalion's maintenance area sits in a small Belgian village. Mechanics work through the night, patching bullet holes, replacing engines, keeping the battered Shermans running. It is here that Abrams gathers his most trusted officers. He explains his idea: extra flags, dummy antennas, careful spacing to suggest additional tanks hidden in tree lines, aggressive movement patterns to raise maximum dust, coordinated radio traffic to flood German intercept stations with chatter suggesting a much larger force. The room falls silent. Captain William Gruber, one of Abrams's company commanders, finally speaks. "Colonel, with respect, that is the dumbest thing I have ever heard." Other officers nod in agreement. One points out that deceiving the enemy with false unit markings technically violates the laws of war. Another notes that spreading tanks apart makes them more vulnerable to concentrated fire. A third simply stares at Abrams as if he has lost his mind. "That is illegal," the intelligence officer states flatly. "False insignia are prohibited under the Hague Conventions." Abrams waves away the objection. "We are not claiming to be a different unit. We are claiming to be more of the same unit. There is nothing in the Hague Conventions about flags. The distinction is legally questionable at best. But Abrams is not interested in legal arguments. He is interested in survival. He orders the battalion supply sergeant to gather every spare flag, antenna, and marking device he can find. Maintenance crews are tasked with fabricating dummy antenna mounts, simple wooden poles that, from a distance, resemble the radio antennas of command vehicles. The first prototype appears the next morning. A single Sherman tank now bristles with 3 sets of unit flags, 2 dummy antennas, and additional tarpaulins draped to suggest concealed equipment. From 500 meters, it looks like a platoon command group. Abrams orders a test. The modified tank drives across an open field while officers observe from a distant hilltop, simulating German observation post conditions. The reports come back positive. Through binoculars, the single tank appears to be 3 or 4 vehicles moving in close formation. The dust cloud alone suggests significant mass. "It will never fool them up close," Captain Gruber admits. "But if they are watching from a kilometer away through field glasses, they will see what they expect to see," Abrams finishes. "Large American armored forces advancing to attack. They will report what they see. Their commanders will plan accordingly." The technique is crude. It is improvised. It relies entirely on German assumptions and the limitations of visual observation. It is also brilliant. Within 48 hours, every tank in the 37th Battalion has been modified. Each Sherman now carries flags and markings suggesting 3 to 4 vehicles. Radio operators have rehearsed scripts of fictional unit communications. Tank commanders have been briefed on movement patterns designed to maximize the illusion. The 37th Tank Battalion is about to become a ghost division. Word of Abrams's plan reaches division headquarters within days. The reaction is predictable. Colonel Bruce C. Clark, commanding Combat Command A of the 4th Armored Division, summons Abrams to explain himself. Clark is a by-the-book officer, a West Point man who believes in doctrine, procedure, and proper channels. He has heard disturbing reports about unauthorized modifications to unit markings. The meeting takes place in a commandeered Belgian farmhouse. Clark sits behind a scarred wooden table, flanked by his operations and intelligence officers. Abrams stands before them like a cadet being disciplined. "You are telling me," Clark says slowly, "that you have ordered your tanks to carry false flags and fabricated antennas to deceive the enemy about your strength. Yes, sir. You understand this is completely irregular. Yes, sir. You understand this violates every principle of standard tactical communication. Yes, sir. Clark leans forward. And you understand that if this scheme fails, if the Germans see through your little trick and concentrate their forces against your actual position, you will have achieved nothing except to make your battalion easier to destroy. I understand the risk, sir. The intelligence officer interjects. Colonel Abrams, our estimates indicate the German force in this sector includes elements of the 11th Panzer Division and possibly the 116th. We are talking about 150 to 200 armored vehicles. Your battalion has 54 tanks. These deception measures cannot possibly. They do not need to fool the German tanks. Abrams interrupts. They need to fool the German commanders. The Panzers are not going to attack what they believe to be an overwhelming force. Their doctrine emphasizes concentration against weakness. If they think my battalion is a full armored combat command, they will maneuver to find a better avenue of approach. They will delay. They will hesitate. And if they attack anyway, then we fight. But we were going to fight anyway. At least this way, we might buy time. We might create confusion. We might make them deploy inefficiently against a threat that does not exist. The room erupts. Staff officers argue over doctrine, regulations, legal implications. Someone mentions court-martial. Someone else points out that the Germans have used similar deception tactics throughout the war. Clark lets the argument rage for several minutes before raising his hand for silence. He studies Abrams carefully. The two men have served together for months. Clark knows Abrams's record, the aggressive leadership, the tactical brilliance, the tendency to improvise beyond the boundaries of acceptable doctrine. This is insane, Clark finally says. Yes, sir. It is completely unauthorized. Yes, sir. And if it works? Abrams allows himself a small smile. Then we write it into the doctrine for next time, sir. Clark is silent for a long moment. Then he does something unexpected. He laughs. Do it, he says. But Abrams, if this goes wrong, I am going to deny ever having this conversation. You are on your own. Understood, sir. The meeting ends. Abrams returns to his battalion. The operation will proceed. But the bureaucratic battle is not over. Word continues to spread through 3rd Army headquarters. Patton himself hears about the unconventional tactics being employed by one of his battalion commanders. Patton's response is characteristically direct. He sends a single message to the 4th Armored Division. If it kills Germans, I do not care if Abrams dresses his tanks in pink tutus. Let him fight. The message electrifies the 37th Battalion. They have authorization from the top. The Ghost Division will ride. If you have been enjoying this story of unconventional genius, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. We release new documentaries every week exploring the forgotten innovations that changed military history. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. September 25th, 1944. The fields east of Arlon, Belgium. Abrams's plan goes into effect at dawn. The 37th Tank Battalion advances in spread formation, each tank maintaining intervals 3 times normal doctrine. Flags flutter from every vehicle. Company markers, platoon markers, fabricated command pennants. The dummy antennas bounce with the motion of the tanks, catching the morning light. From the German observation posts on the high ground ahead, the approaching force appears massive. Field glasses track the American advance, counting flags, estimating strength. Reports flow back to the German command post. Estimate 1 armored combat command, possibly reinforced. Minimum 150 tanks. Multiple battalion strength elements advancing on broad front. The reports are wrong by a factor of 3, but the Germans have no way of knowing. Lieutenant Heinrich Gruber, commanding a reconnaissance element of the 11th Panzer Division, watches the American approach through his binoculars. What he sees terrifies him. "They are everywhere," he radios back. "American tanks across the entire horizon. We cannot hold this position." The German defensive plan begins to unravel. Original orders called for a concentrated counterattack against the American spearhead. But the spearhead now appears to be an entire armored fist. German commanders, conditioned by years of fighting the materially superior Allies, assume the worst. Reserve units are ordered to fall back. Defensive positions are abandoned. The German force that outnumbers Abrams's actual battalion begins withdrawing to avoid encirclement by what they believe to be an overwhelming American force. The deception holds for 3 critical hours. During those 3 hours, the 37th Tank Battalion advances 12 kilometers against negligible resistance. German positions that should have been defended to the death are found empty, abandoned in haste. Equipment is captured intact. Prisoners are taken in confused groups, convinced they are surrendering to a massive American force. Sergeant Thomas Jenkins, commanding a Sherman named Lucky Lucy, describes the advance. "We kept waiting for the shooting to start. Every tree line, every village, we expected to take fire. But they were gone. Just gone. We found hot meals still on tables, maps still spread out. They ran like they had seen a ghost. The Ghost Division has struck. By mid-afternoon, German commanders realize they have been deceived." Aerial reconnaissance finally provides accurate counts. The American force is a single understrength battalion, not the armored combat command they feared. But it is too late. The German defensive line has collapsed. Units that withdrew in good order are now scattered across kilometers of Belgian countryside. The counterattack that was supposed to throw back the American advance has been abandoned. The initiative has shifted decisively. German radio intercepts from that day reveal the frustration and confusion at higher headquarters. "How is this possible?" one German colonel demands in a recorded transmission. "We had them outnumbered. We had the terrain. And we ran from colored flags?" The human cost tells the story most clearly. In the 24 hours before Abrams's deception, the 4th Armored Division suffered 47 tank crew casualties, with 12 tanks destroyed. In the 24 hours during and after the deception, casualties dropped to 8, with only 3 tanks lost. The kill ratio inverts. German vehicles and equipment are captured at a rate of nearly 5-to-1. Prisoners number in the hundreds. But the numbers that matter most are the lives saved. Private First Class. Robert Halloran, a loader in Charlie Company, later wrote to his family, "We should have died that day. Everyone knew it. The odds were impossible. But we drove forward, and the Germans vanished like morning fog." I do not know how Colonel Abrams did it, but because of him, we came home. For more stories of military innovation that changed the course of history, check out our previous video on the engineer who invented a weapon so devastating that both sides refused to use it. The link is in the description below. Now, let us see what happened next. The techniques pioneered by Creighton Abrams spread rapidly through the American armored forces. Within weeks, units across the European theater were adopting modified versions of his deception tactics. Dummy antennas became standard issue. Flag configurations were redesigned to suggest larger formations. Radio deception protocols were formalized and taught. The official after-action reports credited Abrams's innovation with accelerating the Third Army's advance by an estimated 2 weeks. The confusion sown among German commanders during those critical September days contributed to the liberation of Belgium and the positioning of Allied forces for the final push into Germany. General Patton personally commended Abrams in a ceremony at Third Army headquarters. This officer, Patton said, understands the fundamental truth of armored warfare. It is not the size of the tank. It is the size of the idea inside the commander's head. Abrams received the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions in September 1944. He would go on to become one of the most decorated tank commanders of the war, leading the relief of Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge and fighting through to the final German surrender. After the war, the principles he demonstrated were incorporated into military doctrine worldwide. Modern deception operations, from dummy vehicles to electronic warfare spoofing, trace their lineage directly to the crude flag tricks of the 37th Tank Battalion. The M1 Abrams tank, introduced in 1980 and still the backbone of American armored forces today, bears his name. It is one of the highest honors the United States Army can bestow. Yet Creighton Abrams himself remained characteristically humble about his innovations. In a rare interview given decades after the war, he was asked about the flag deception that made him famous. "It was nothing special," he said. "We just convinced them to see what they expected to see. The Germans expected overwhelming American forces. We gave them flags and dust and radio chatter. They did the rest themselves." Asked if he was proud of the lives saved, Abrams paused. "I think about the men we lost. Every day. The ones we saved. They went home, raised families, lived their lives. That is what mattered. Not the tactics, not the glory, just the boys who made it home." Creighton Abrams died on September 4th, 1974, while serving as the Chief of Staff of the United States Army. He was 59 years old. His legacy endures in the tanks that bear his name, in the doctrine that guides modern commanders, and in the simple truth he demonstrated on those Belgian fields 8 decades ago. In war, as in life, victory does not always belong to the strongest. Sometimes it belongs to the one willing to think differently. Sometimes it belongs to the one with the courage to try something stupid.